Good afternoon, everyone. So Shadrach Mwangangi is my name, the Director Executive Education. So I'm very excited that we're coming to the close of day one. And so I get the opportunity to moderate the moderators. And that's what we're going to be doing. And the idea is to really, because we had a session in the business school, we had a session here, is just to hear what were the highlights of the conversation in the different sessions. And we will also have an opportunity to get questions. If there are final thoughts, final questions from yourselves, that is what we will do. So Elizabeth, the conversation on performance management, best practices for driving results. And I know the session this afternoon was embedding the conversation on productivity, performance, and that's why we had the breakout sessions on performance and coaching. So from the performance session, what were the highlights? What are some of the things that came out as things that HR practitioners should really focus on?
Right. This feels like I'm going to be boiling the ocean, trying to summarize a very large conversation. Performance management is usually at the heart of every C-suite discussion because they want to drive performance of the organization, and that cannot be done through people. For us as the people leaders, the question is how do we make sure we're driving that performance while managing a multi-generational workforce, some of whom the way they show up in our traditional settings, in our traditional policies, may not be able to fly. So some of the key things that we noted is that we need to also change and adapt to the way the world is moving. We were so used to clock in and clock out hours, to speak to also what Dr. Julius mentioned in the morning, and yet you are, and a very formalized desk space and all those environments, yet people are saying, you want value or you want a volume? You just want to see me or you want to see the output? So I think one of the major issue we brought out is that we want people who will give us good quality output, whether they are lying on their bed and doing it there, so long as they give us the output. It's a challenge because we're also talking about collaboration, and that becomes an issue of how will we know they're collaborating if they're working differently? But now with all the tools and technologies that exist, collaboration may be enabled, but it still needs to be managed. Again, the second issue was to set clear KPIs, not to manage people's activities, but truly the outputs. Thirdly, AI is with us. It might make you feel inauthentic. Some people feel like we're just rubber stamping what ChatGPT has and calling it performance. But it was very clear that the people who will win in this race of AI are the people who ask the right questions, know how to prompt the systems correctly. It's a case of garbage in, garbage out. If you ask ChatGPT to draw for you a cat, it will just draw a cat. But if you want creativity, you'll say, I want a cat that is chasing a lion in the wilderness and winning. You know, that will be different because you've given it a lot more context and you can say what it is. So it is also going to ask us to start thinking differently on how we use those tools and also ensuring driving growth. Lastly is how we also reward performance, because performance comes with money. So this is a money conversation. Who are your star players? How do you differentiate them in an era where collaboration is being enforced? How will we make sure that our star performers are not burning out? How can we tell in advance before they start burning out? How do we enable old school managers to have the right conversations? But most importantly, performance management is not a periodic. January, we set goals. June, we do media reviews, and then end year reviews. Now we are talking the whole year through. That means every week you're talking to people. Managers are beginning to feel like it's not an authentic conversation because it sounds like you're appreciating too much. People are not used to it, or you're asking the same questions over and over. Sometimes even documenting is becoming a project, so it's getting tiring. But it's something we must lean into, because a lot of times when we have to let go, especially those who are not performing, or put them back on track, you have to have data that enables that decision. So when we're being pushed for data, we're also being pushed to have activities. Some places it's uncomfortable for some people leaders, but we must get it done. So individual performance will continue to be celebrated. We will not throw away the baby with the bathwater and say no more annual reviews. That will happen. The only challenge we will have and continue to have is that we were so used to the succession plans that in my time, maybe now things are different. We observe you for a couple of 3 to 5 years. These days, careers are 2 years, right? So how do I build a succession plan on a 2-year performance metric, right? How do I make sure that I'm able to look at, maybe promotions were after 3 years in some policies, we need to change that. Can you promote after every 6 months? What's the implication on your budgets, on your salaries, and all those things? And then thinking directly about even the investments we shall make to develop those people. Should we continue to invest? The answer is yes. Maybe not in mega learning, long-term courses, but these micro-learning opportunities will enable us to develop people and to enable them to perform for the period which they're there. So performance management will continue to be needed and useful, but it will just be done differently. We just need to change our mind in the way we approach it. And the Gen Zs are making things look like they are changing the world, but the world is actually changing in itself. How we drive volume and value is going to change. So performance management has to be in the conversation.
Thank you. Let's appreciate Elizabeth.
Thank you.
You know, when you listen to the conversation around AI, I'm reminded of something I read somewhere, that the tragedy of AI is not the misuse of AI, but the misuse of AI. And so I think the conversation is, how do we start shifting our mindset to having AI as an enabler? And somebody talked about that, and not the strategy of the organization. How does AI enable the organization to achieve the outcomes? And I know we cannot exhaust all the points, but performance conversation will continue. As we talk about performance conversation, some of the things that came out were communication, empathy, the work diversity, multi-generational aspects. And the other segment was talking about coaching as a driver of productivity. And I see that also almost touching on performance. So probably, what were the insights from the coaching segment in terms of how coaching can drive productivity?
Okay, so coaching as a driver for productivity, we started by first appreciating what is coaching, because it's a relatively new concept. Coaching, we have ICF, the International Coaching Federation, the body. I can say it's only 30 years old. In Kenya, it's 10 years, yeah? So I'm qualifying that it's relatively new. So as per ICF, we say that coaching is a thought-provoking process that inspires clients to be their best, to bring the best version of themselves. So first, that is what coaching is. Again, our conversation was around return on investment. That kept on coming, yeah? People want to see, can we measure this coaching? And I have some statistics here, because it is said that numbers tell the story. And like Monica, my background is mathematics, so for us, numbers is big. Eh? So when it comes to driving performance, they say that for organizations that have embedded coaching in their culture, they have a 50% increase in team performance, 70% increase in individual performance, and 48% increase in organizational performance. When you look at return on investment in terms of what you have put, because the other appreciation was coaching being relatively new, it's not cheap, yeah? It's not cheap. But a global survey that was done showed that those organizations that invested in coaching, they are getting 5-fold, 7-fold in terms of that initial investment that they made, yeah? So that's what the numbers are saying about performance. Then another interesting conversation was around the coaching process. So in a coaching process, there is the person who's coaching and the person who's being coached. So the person being coached is called the client. So who owns the process? The answer is the client. Remember, it's a thought-provoking process. The role of the coach is try and draw that potential in the person through their different interventions. One of them is powerful questions, asking the right questions. So the client sets the agenda. The client drives the process. So what happens where there's what we call a triad? A triad is where you have the coach, you have the client, and you have the organization that now wants people coached, yeah? And the organization wants to know what are these conversations that you're working or you're speaking about. Again, as coaches, we are bound by confidentiality, so there's only so much we can divulge to HR. However, there's an agreement on a metrics of how what we cannot breach confidentiality to support the process for the organization. Then there was a question of, is it better for organizations to have internal coaches or external coaches? And the case has been successful organizations have internal coaches. They have trained coaches. Remember, we want to embed the coaching in the culture, so it's not a touch and go. So when you have internal coaches, you're at a better position. However, sometimes there is resistance because the coaching conversation is based on trust. So if I am an employee and I'm being coached and I'm thinking, okay, will this conversation show up in my performance appraisal? There may be a breach of trust there. So it's good, yes, you have internal coaches, but you can supplement that with external coaches. Yeah, but at the end of the day, for organization, and especially now with the workforce, with the changing dynamics of the workforce, coaching helps bring meaningful and empowering conversations. We are moving away from telling. Yeah, we don't want bosses who tell. We want bosses who empower.
We want bosses. Do we talk about bosses still? Or do we talk about leaders? Right? We want HR leaders who empower. Is that true? Let's appreciate Lena. And as we think about how we create organizations that will be competitive in the future, one of the values we have in the business school or in the university is lifelong learning. And of course, there are many interventions that organizations can embrace, but coaching is becoming very important. And when you listen to Lena and the conversation that has happened in that segment, then you're talking about the potential is in the people. How do HR experts, how do leaders bring out that potential? And I think for organizations that are going to be competitive, then that clearly is something that must be embraced. Coaching culture, the way we do it. And so it's very interesting. In the interest of time, I'll bring this to a close at this point. Trust is a currency we must continue to invest in. As people leaders, that is something we must intentionally build our muscles around. The second thing, and I love the challenge in the morning, and it was, if we actually are in charge of the most important resource in the organization, why are we not taking our place in the seat, in the table? And I think that is another conversation that has also come in the afternoon around, why are we not having HRs as coaches? Because if we are to bring out the potential in the people, which is what we must do, understanding how asking powerful questions can help you manage the Gen Zs, because you are addressing them at what is your goal, what is it that you want to achieve. And I think that is something for us to consider. Sorry about that. The other thing is, and he talked about, let's become coaches. And the last thing is, at the business school at Strathmore University, we are keen to partner with you so that we can co-create whatever intervention it is that can support you as an organization, as an individual, to elevate yourself, the organization to the next level. And so let's continue. That's why we have these conversations around what can we do as experts in HR, experts in finance, experts, and we have those conversations ongoing every other time because we realize iron sharpens iron. And from the conversations today and tomorrow, you've seen what we've done here on wellness. That's what we do when we have our events, when we have, sometimes actually our wellness champions come to the office to make sure, please stand from your machine, let's do a stretch, because that's what we are doing at the organization level. And so as HR practitioners, I'm hoping that we're getting nuggets that we can help us in terms of shaping our policies and the direction we are going. Asanteni sana, thank you for your time.